fear any of them.
Very, very good evening. Monday, the 8th of December 2025. My name is Raj Emir. This is a Recusant 9 transmission. It's been a while, hasn't it? It's been just over a month. I'd like to say I've had a rest. I haven't. I've been busy. Hopefully, you signed up and you get the emails, writing content, lobbying, working in the background, and also a few interviews in the States that have hopefully expanded and grown our audience somewhat. A very, very good evening to all of you. Yes, I have missed you. For those of you who've messaged me, I have missed you. So let's get on with this evening's transmission. He says,
here we are, half a year later.
Here we go.
Here we are, half a year later, and the government has done nothing whatsoever to get this inquiry set up, and their inaction makes them complicit in the cover-up. Now, when I say cover-up, what I mean is, for many, many years, police forces and local councils deliberately covered up the systematic rape of young girls. Mainly, and let me finish the point, Sophie, mainly vulnerable young white girls, because the perpetrators were mainly of Pakistani origin. We need to get to the truth behind that and hold those people who covered these horrendous crimes up accountable, not least to deter it from happening again. Not a single person has been prosecuted for covering up these horrendous crimes. We need to get to the truth.
I just want to state how much I agree on what horrendous cover-up it has been and how many failings there have been. But to say that this government is complicit in that cover-up...
By delay.
That is a big statement to make.
Well, by their delay. I mean, they announced an inquiry under pressure half a year ago, and here we are, and nothing has happened.
I understand.
Nothing has happened.
I absolutely understand the frustration and things, but you know, when we're talking about something as serious as this, and we want to show our anger at the cover-up that some people have done, don't you think it kind of like demeans it slightly if you just say, oh yeah, the government's complicit in that cover-up as well?
Well, I'm afraid by their inaction, that is what is happening. Okay. Now, what we're doing today is we're not just sort of criticising from the sidelines, we're actually publishing a detailed terms of reference that we've developed together with survivors and their families, and it's designed to be constructive. I really hope the government pick it up and run with it, appoint a judge to lead the inquiry, and just get on with it, because we must expose the truth. And those people who deliberately covered up the rape of young girls simply because they were more concerned about being called racist than they were about protecting girls, that has to be exposed.
Chris Philp, of course, is the Shadow Home Secretary, and of course many of you are right to point out how the Conservatives were inactive during their tenure. But, my friends, you need to take a step back, take a deep breath, and appreciate the gravity of what genuinely took place today. Complicit in a cover-up. The government is being accused by the official opposition, not Reform, not some fringe MPs, but the official opposition. The government is being accused of being complicit in a cover-up. And he makes reference to some detailed terms of reference. And I'll bring these up for you because I want to show you where they are first and foremost so you can see them in case you want to read them yourself. But more so because the Conservatives actually went further, and it's one of those moments where I am genuinely overwhelmed. And if not for us, this would not have happened. Do not believe anyone who tells you otherwise. If not for us, this would not have happened. So this is the webpage on the Conservative homepage. Grooming gang survivors deserve more. 6 months after forcing Labour into statutory inquiry on grooming gangs, nothing has moved. Survivors deserve better than this drift and denial. We must give a voice to the voiceless and ensure that the survivors get the justice they deserve. This is why the terms of reference Kemi Badenoch and Chris Philp, published today, have been created by the survivors and victims of grooming gangs. And there's a press conference. We're going to listen to it in a moment. But I want to bring up the terms of reference here. And you can see, we'll go through it. But there are some specific elements in these terms of reference that I think you need to have your attention drawn to. I'm not happy with this, by the way, and I will go through later on, because you know what happens to my conservative friends who are watching this? This is what happens. It's like watching MasterChef or something and seeing someone cook something and make it so effortlessly and think you can copy them. It doesn't work. For those of us who've tried, we know it doesn't work. But we'll get to that. I want to focus, first of all, on how the Conservatives are on record now saying that the government is complicit and individuals involved in the cover-up, not one has been held to account. And in the terms of reference, the Conservatives now make reference to the Biraderi, the Pakistani clans, the cartels. This is now no longer a far-right conspiracy. This is the official opposition finally confirming what we have been saying relentlessly now for 7 years. They called us racists and claimed we were barefaced liars. Now even the Conservatives are repeating our rape gang analysis, as you just heard, almost word for word. We were right, they were wrong. It's no more complicated than that. We were right, they were wrong. They were just too arrogant to admit it. And still they pretend we do not exist. You can see that still they pretend we do not exist, even though they take all the content from us. Who cares? 6 years, 7 years they've been calling us liars, racists, far right, toxic and troublemakers. The political class lined up to destroy anyone who dared stand alongside me and name the truth about the Pakistani rape gangs. And so we're clear, and I've just finally put the finishing touches to this, preparing for here. I've always said they were racially motivated, religiously justified, politically protected, and the final strand of this, socially accepted. I've maintained this from the outset. Racially motivated, religiously justified, politically protected, and now also socially accepted. Those are the 4 elements to what has taken place. We said, encapsulating everything, that when it came to the criminals, we always said these were not random criminals. We claimed, we used the word, we introduced the word into this discourse. There were cartels. We explained how there were Pakistani clan-based networks, Brathrie, however you want to pronounce it, who used cultural authority and political leverage to shield rapists and silence children. They said we were wrong, and they said we were dangerous. Today, the Conservatives have drafted terms of reference for the national inquiry into the grooming gangs that proves We were right all along. I'll bring it up so you can see it. Clause 2.1. B. Do you see it? To consider any evidence of the propensity for those involved in such networks to exhibit particular religious, ethnic, or national characteristics, including family or clan networks. That is the Pakistani Brathrie. That is the Conservatives now admitting, acknowledging what we have been saying along. Clause 2.1c. Where evidence failings within B is discovered, to consider whether any failure to act or investigate suspected cases by state institutions was driven in any way by the religious, ethnic, national, family, or clan characteristics of suspects or victims. Clan characteristics yet again. Clause 3.15. Go along. Specifically, social and family ties. Explore the breadth of family or other social ties between perpetrators of crimes. The Brathrie. This is our language. This is our analysis, lifted wholesale by the Conservatives, unless you believe they came up with this. And now it is being deployed against the government. Of course, this is the same Conservative Party that spent years running from this issue, who are now using our exact framework to bludgeon Labour's inquiry process, and bludgeoning it they are. They won't acknowledge us, but they cannot function without us. And I'll show you the press conference in a minute. And you can decide if the likes of Lucia Ray or even Fiona Goddard or any of the others have come up with this. You can decide yourself. We documented kinship networks protecting offenders. We showed how honour-shame dynamics silence victims. We exposed how these clans leveraged political power to intimidate authorities, capture institutions, and blackmail the mechanics of government. We named names, we mapped connections, and we brought the samosas. We showed the receipts. And that is why, time after time, they have attempted and failed, landed flat on their face at every opportunity where they tried to prosecute me on this. And they spent years trying to destroy us for it. So when you use words like this, as though I'm some sort of, or to suggest that because I am a Muslim, I'm some sort of double agent, I suggest you go and look in the mirror and ask yourselves, would we be here right now if I and a small team of people from my town had not said to them, we do not fear you? They avoided all of this. The Conservatives, Labour, they avoided all of this. because confronting clan-based rape gangs meant acknowledging that our democracy has been infiltrated. It goes much further than just the industrial scale gang rape of our nation's children. This is about the infiltration of our very democracy. And if they had done that, it meant admitting that tribal structures from Pakistan now operate parallel governance systems across the United Kingdom, capturing councils, police forces and parliamentary seats. It means facing the truth that British institutions bend to clan pressure rather than uphold British law. What we have just done, that the Conservatives have now piggybacked on, and have been piggybacking on this since January, is a total intellectual conquest. We didn't just survive this government's destruction campaign, we made our framework indispensable to any credible discussion on rape gangs. When those who deny you exist steal your analysis to gain political advantage, we, my friends, have won the argument that matters. And Labour cannot escape this either. The Conservatives have made clan-based grooming the central battleground using our intelligence. Every Labour response will be measured against this framework. We've trapped them all in the truth we documented while they protected their careers over the lives of our nation's children. The recognition in these terms of reference didn't happen because politicians grew spines. It happened because our campaign made denial impossible. They tried to destroy us for telling the truth. Instead, we became the framework they cannot govern without. This goes far beyond the rape gangs. We've forced them to acknowledge what we've spent decades denying. That clan structures transplanted from Pakistan now operate with impunity across Britain, capturing institutions, silencing opposition, and subverting British governance to serve tribal loyalty over law. You've seen my posts over the last few weeks, doubling down on this. Why? Now you know why. Now you know why. The rape gangs were just the symptom. Clan capture of our democracy is the disease. And now they have admitted that not just the rape gangs exist, but the underlying factor of the Brathrie. Yes. Take a moment to understand and appreciate just what we have done, even though we are blacklisted from every legacy mainstream media publication outlet in the United Kingdom. Just take a moment to appreciate that whilst I have a sip of Vimto. Smiling at Pauline's comment. Someone's got Ovaltine. Ovaltine, it'll put me to sleep, I'm afraid. Ovaltine will put me to sleep. They never had a chance. I'm glad you're optimistic. Oh, wow. And trust me, Lynn, the number of times I've been locked up in police cells with my head in my hands, asking myself, why on earth have you picked this fight? Okay. So we now understand and appreciate the dangers of the Pakistani clans, of the Brathrie system. And as you all know, my work is grounded in actual direct campaigning. I'm not a commentator, I'm not a journalist. I roll my sleeves up and I work in the very communities and I take the fight to these people. And I get hit, which is fine. But I need to now make you aware of this because it is happening in Oldham, where we are fighting these people head on. And I know some of you are supporters of this movement, and I want you to know I am not your enemy. I have a very positive relationship with Ben Habib and Advance UK. I think Ben is a very intelligent man. I think he's an intelligent, honourable as well. And if you follow my work, you will know how disappointed I am that the likes of Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, Lee Anderson, all of them couldn't put their differences aside for the greater good. I think it makes us weaker that we are separate. I helped clean up the Reform branch in my town, and the Facebook page in my town that was Reform promptly became Advance UK for the borough, led by a man called Paul Boots Eric. I was not aware Advance UK's policy was to promote Pakistani sectarians and Islamists. I know there are many of you here who support Advance UK. Tell me, my friends, why is the Facebook page Advance UK for the Borough of Oldham? Here we go. With Ben Habib on the front, supporting these people. Without the Oldham Independent Group, also known as the Oldham Group, we as a borough have zero chance of removing Labour. And I'm a realist, says Paul Eric, the leader of this. If Advance UK is in bed with Pakistani sectarians, I think the people, not just of this town, but across the country, need to know this is the case. You claim it's fake. Yep. It's not fake. Because this team, this man and his team, were at the Advance UK conference at the weekend, posting pictures of themselves alongside Ben Habib. So it's not fake. And whilst Advance UK have distanced themselves from this, if you distance yourself from this, why are you still taking pictures with these people? Cameron, Naveed, Rangzib and I don't agree on some things. But I'm not in alignment that these conflicts should dominate Oldham politics. Here we go. He goes on to claim his responsibility and his role in removing. In 2019, when I commenced this journey, Labour had 45 out of 60 councillors, and our local Labour council at the time, blah, blah, blah. Listen, you cannot get in bed with these people. You cannot get in bed with these people. You cannot partner with these people. And as I pleaded at the time, when we were supporting Libyan dissidents to go and fight alongside the Al-Nusra Front to remove Gaddafi, as I pleaded at the time, I'm pleading with my friends in Advance UK now. Our enemy's enemy is not our friend. These people are not our friends. They do not want the same things we want. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, they put this out themselves. Listen. He says, and so there's no ambiguity. He is now interviewing and promoting these people. So, if this is what Advance UK is, building partnerships with Pakistani sectarians, you're not for me. Meanwhile, in Oldham, last week, we had to clean the branch up, remember? We finally got a Reform UK team up and running. Now, I'm not saying one above the other. Not for one moment am I saying that. I'll support whoever and wherever I can that will make a difference. But look at the pictures of the people we've got here. Something to make us proud and something to take the fight to the Labour Party with. Even if these people were to lose, I would rather stand and fight alongside people who look like this, with beliefs and values like they have, than the Pakistani sectarians. So, you will have choices to make in the towns and cities where you live. And all I will say to you is, our enemy's enemy is not our friend. And these people, as in, these people, I would not trust if my life depended on it. Okay? Something else to bring up is a series of posts. Again, you can see he's posting on the Advance UK post to have an attack at me. I can do this now. I'll do it another time. But this is now a police matter, because the allegations in this are extremely dangerous. But again, through Advance UK. Now my question to you, my question to all of you, if I have not proven myself over the last 7 years, I will never prove myself. Why is Advance UK picking a fight with me? And then I will add, do you really think it's a fight you think you can win? On this issue? On these matters? I don't need a team of advisors. I don't need a teleprompter or notes. I have forgotten more on this work than any one of you in your teams from Advance put together have an understanding of. So if you want to back Paul Boots Eric, as he maligns me, as he smears me, and remember, I've said or done nothing here. And as everyone else has found out, there is only so much of the turning of the cheek I will do before I swing right back. And it won't be pleasant. Okay. Let's move on to something that Liz Truss has had to say. And now she's not Prime Minister and she's found herself. The more I listen to Liz Truss, the more I genuinely admire her. This was a recent interview by Liz Truss. Very small snippet. Let me play it. I'm just going to find it first, but let me play it. I like how I organise all this in a certain way, and then when we start talking, it goes all over the place.
We've got to break the cycle of people perpetuating communities in Britain that are antithetical to our way of life. You know, bringing in cousins, having cousin marriages, perpetuating, you know, we have Sharia law operating in parts of Britain. That has to stop. So yeah. I would cut off chain migration as well, the ability of people to bring their families in, which I think has been a big cause. We've also got a big problem with student migration, you know, student dependence, visas for things like care workers. Well, I think the situation is so serious now that we have to take drastic action. Okay, that's Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, and she takes it further. She talks about cousin marriages and clan, you know, the stuff of bringing in cousins from abroad and marriages and visas and stuff. And what she's basically trying to articulate is how they all are growing their clans. They're growing their clans, and the reason why they're growing their clans, according to a former Prime Minister, is that Sharia law is now operating openly in parts of Britain, and it has to stop.
So a motive of the Brathrie system is not just to strengthen the clan, but also to expand Sharia law in the United Kingdom. And I do believe that she is talking a lot of sense. I hear she's opened or produced her own podcast or something. I will drop her a message and smile and say, please have me on. And maybe some of you could message her as well. Please have a conversation with Rajami. I know she had a conversation with my friend Alex Phillips and I forget who else she had on her first one. But please have me on. And the harvesting of postal votes in the sector is all through the clan system. The Brathrie system facilitates all of this, Chloe. The Brathrie system facilitates all of this. I'm going to listen to Maggie Oliver. She did a little interview earlier. Is it going to work?
Yeah, it's very much like, you know, we're going round and round in circles with this. And I listened to Kemi Badenoch today. You know, they are playing politics with this topic, and caught in the middle of it are victims and survivors who have been desperately fighting for the truth to come out for decades. What I find abhorrent in a way is that, you know, we've got Kemi Badenoch now. The Conservatives were in power from 2010 to 2024. And when the last national inquiry reported in over 3 years ago now and made 20 recommendations, they failed to put them into practice. We've got this, you know, ping pong ball between them all trying to score points. I'd like to say, though, Martin, that I don't engage in the noise. The victims and the survivors have got their voices, and Fiona, Elizabeth, Eliane and Jess, they have used their voices very well and resigned. They've had horrendous abuse. But from the perspective of me and my charity, we've just heard today that we are being given leave to appear in the High Court in London on the 3rd of February 26, because we've taken this existing government to a judicial review to try to force them to implement the 20 recommendations that the other original National Abuse Inquiry ordered. You know, that was 7 years, £200 million. And what I would say, if the Conservatives had implemented those recommendations 3 years ago, we now wouldn't have this national scandal. So they're all playing games with this, but we and I am not going away until we know the ethnicity. We do know, but what I want is that we record the data from now on with every rape, every element of child abuse that goes on by these gangs. Without the data, without the facts, we are constantly going around this same hamster wheel. And the question has to be, why? Why on earth do we not just get a grip? The whole country knows that these gangs are predominantly Pakistani Muslim men. Now, I have never said that all abuse in this country is by these gangs. Most abuse is in the home. But I have never seen any other kind of child abuse tiptoed around where, you know, perpetrators are cherry-picked. There are political manoeuvrings going on here to cover up what has been going on for decades. And the public are sick and tired of what we see. I mean, in 2013, I sent a report to the government, to the Home Office, and calling for ethnicity to be recorded then. That's 12 years ago, and we are still having these same conversations, which are pointless. Let's get a grip, get the facts, deal with it, understand it, and protect the future generations of children. And I have the greatest admiration for Fiona and for all the, Eliane, Elizabeth, for sticking their necks on the block. Because what I believe was happening with this new inquiry, I have great respect for Louise Casey, and I hope that she gets centrally involved in rewriting what is going to come. But what I believe the Labour government were trying to do was to play off one set of survivors against another, water down this inquiry so that we include all kinds of abuse. And that is not what this is meant to be. We are looking at grooming gangs. It is the only kind of abuse that I've ever seen that has been covered up by the state. Martin, we had cover-ups in the Catholic Church, in the Church of England, but the church themselves covered that up. In relation to these grooming gangs, it's not just been the community from which they come that's covered it up. It's been the police, social services, councils, politicians. This is the only area of abuse that I have seen this happen, and it has to stop. So let's stop playing games. Let's get a grip and do it properly.
Former detective in Greater Manchester Police.
Roger, why are you smiling? I'm smiling because Maggie Oliver is angry. And Maggie Oliver is a voice in this space that no one really dares disagree with. So before we move on, she is confirming that the Conservatives are playing politics with this, and how they are all playing games. She's also confirming that in 2017, that's when the Conservatives were in power, she submitted a report to the Home Office calling for ethnicity data to be included, release provided. Now, I disagree with Maggie Oliver on a specific. I believe the solutions are political because I'm a political campaigner. I always have said this to all of you. And this can only be solved in a political sphere. But she also says very, very clearly there, she makes reference to Pakistani Muslim men. And she says it openly now. Trust me, I've been in this space for some time. She hasn't historically said it as openly as this, or as bravely as this. I know, because I pleaded, and it didn't come in the way it now comes. But there's something very specific she says there. I'm sure she appreciates the gravity of what she said. These crimes were covered up by the state. So we now know the cover-up took place. We now know the crimes existed. She says she doesn't understand how on any other child sex exploitation issue you don't tiptoe around it. We've tiptoed around this. Well, we know why. Because they were racially motivated and religiously justified, because of the ethnicity and religion of the perpetrators and the ethnicity of the victims. We now know that. We also now know they were covered up by the state. So why were they covered up by the state? I played an interview right at the beginning where Chris Philp goes back and retreats on familiar, safe territory, the fear of being branded racist. No, Chris. Just as with the Brathrie, you will, in the fullness of time, developed the courage to echo these words. They sold our children for votes. It was a trade, an exchange for power. And there are politicians today in the highest level of government who, if we get our way, by the time this is finished, will go to prison for what they did. Because that is what complicity in the cover-up means. For those of you who are new to me, before I move on to the press conference, and I want to play that. For those of you who are new to me, I get a lot of stick for this. Yeah, I do it all the time, regardless, because 100% I am only here because you have supported me to be here. I cannot do this on my own. I need you to stand with me. We are running out of time. And without the numbers, they will rewrite history and they will win. It's as simple as that. Now, if you believe I have a value in this, then support me. And you support me, there's not a single penny. All of my work is shared for free, but I share most of my work in the detailed way I do via a newsletter. It's on redwall_rebel.co.uk. We know we're near 10,000 subscribers yet, which is what our target was. Pay if you want, don't pay if you don't want, but not subscribing. That saddens me. And for those of you who have the ability to do so, if all of you just bought me a coffee a month, or even a coffee a year, for the amount of people who take value from my work, it would make my life far more tolerable. So here I am. Thank you so much. And indeed, lawyers aren't free or cheap, and it's not just that, Gary. You know, I know, in the world I was trained in, I will never again work in. You've seen what happened to the former soldier and how he's been blocked from volunteering or running some football lessons in Wales. Do you think I'll ever work again? No. I got something on Sadiq Khan, I've just not done it yet. I've just not felt it, Chloe. I tend to trust my instincts, I've just not felt it. It's written, it's produced. My focus is the campaign to try and secure the national inquiry to the highest standards it can be. I've also got something post the national inquiry already ready. If you follow my work, if you follow the way I work, it's, you know, we've got this far because it's like a chessboard and there's 5 moves ahead. We'll see. We'll see, Terry. Yes. Okay, let's bring this up. He says, Safari, go back, put my headphones on.
Is everyone ready?
Here we go.
All right, is everyone ready? Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. It's been 6 months since the Prime Minister accepted the need to hold a grooming gangs inquiry. I believe that this issue needs a lot of political courage, which the government is currently lacking. Nothing has happened. 2 potential chairs have been rejected, survivor documents that would be absolutely crucial for a national inquiry. I believe that the survivors deserve more. I believe that they need a judge-led inquiry, not someone from an institution that has failed survivors before. I have spoken to many survivors and advocates. Sitting at this table, we have parents, survivors, advocates. What they have in common is that they are brave enough to be on this panel today, but also have been willing to waive their anonymity. They have told me that they are losing hope with this inquiry. I don't want that to happen. I want to give them hope. For years, they've had to endure unspeakable abuse. They were let down by countless people and institutions who were meant to protect them. Survivors have been consistently let down. They need politicians now to show courage to stand with them. This press conference today is not about me or about any political party. It is about giving a voice to those people who have been voiceless, those people who need to be heard. We want to work cross-party with anyone who wants to see an inquiry done. We want to help the government to deliver this. But the inquiry and its terms of reference should not be written behind closed doors. They should be written by survivors who know what happened and who know what needs to be looked at. That is why today we are presenting a terms of reference that is based on what the survivors have told us about what it must have, and which also, importantly, follows Baroness Casey's recommendations. I want to be clear that a national inquiry must leave no stone unturned. It must investigate councils, the police, and even the government if necessary. It must be time limited, and it must consider the role of ethnicity, religion, and other cultural factors. Baroness Casey's own report admitted that many of these cases are committed by people of Asian and Pakistani ethnicities. Her own report said that those who downplay the ethnicity of perpetrators are continuing to let down society, local communities, and victims. We agree. As I said, I have spoken to many survivors. We are speaking on their behalf. Their lives and their families' lives have been turned upside down. So separate to this inquiry, the government must act now to ensure that they and their families are supported so they can heal. Whether that is a helpline or dedicated mental health officers, the government must act now and work with survivors, not against them. So I'm going to hand over now to Chris Philp, who's the Shadow Home Secretary, who has done a lot of work on this issue, and then I will be bringing in the survivors, advocates, and parents who are on the panel with us. Chris.
Thank you, Kemi. Well, look, it seems very clear now these rape gangs are the biggest child safeguarding scandal in our country's history. Young girls and some boys as young as just 10 years old were systematically gang raped and trafficked. And because the perpetrators were mainly of Pakistani heritage, those in authority, the police, local councils, who should have protected these vulnerable young people, actively covered up these terrible crimes because they were more concerned about being accused of being racist than they were about protecting young girls and young boys. And that is one of the most shameful episodes, I think, in our country's public protection history. So an inquiry is needed to get to the bottom of this, to get to the truth, and to hold accountable those people who covered up these appalling crimes. Now, we campaigned together with survivors and their families and advocates, like Lucia, to have this inquiry. First of all, we were smeared as jumping on a far-right bandwagon, but eventually, faced with a vote in Parliament, the government eventually agreed in June of this year. But 6 months has now passed, and essentially no progress has been made. A lot of survivors have lost confidence in the government and this process. But rather than just complain from the sidelines, we would like to be constructive, we'd like to be positive, and so working with survivors, their families, and advocates, we've developed a terms of reference for this inquiry that is ready to go, it's detailed, it's specific, it's got the confidence of survivors, and the government, if they wanted to, could adopt it tomorrow. They could appoint a judge to chair this inquiry, and they could get on with it to at last uncover the truth. And the terms of reference we've set out, I think, are very clear. It sets a 2-year time limit on this inquiry. It can't drag on for years and years. We're clear this should be led by a judge, so it's impartial and that survivors can have confidence. It should specifically investigate the deliberate cover-up of these crimes perpetrated by police and councils, deliberately covered these things up. It should, as Kemi said, look at the ethnicity and the cultural background of the perpetrators. There is a lot of evidence showing the vast majority, were of Pakistani descent, and in some cases were deliberately targeting vulnerable young white girls. And it should also make sure it has the powers to compel witnesses to attend and force the production of documents. Just as recently as last year in Manchester, the local inquiry saw the chairs resigning because even as recently as 2024, public authorities were withholding vital evidence. Well, a statutory inquiry under the 2005 Act can compel the production of that evidence. And of course, it's vital that victims and survivors are given anonymity and protection as required. So these terms of reference, detailed, they're credible, they're comprehensive, they've got the confidence of survivors, and I hope the government will accept this in the spirit they're intended. I hope they adopt these terms of reference, appoint a judge, and get on with it, because by delaying, as they have done, the government is simply perpetuating or allowing to be perpetuated the cover-up that for so long has happened. The time for covering this up is over. We need the truth, and those who covered these crimes up need to be held accountable.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm now going to bring in Fiona and then Marlon. Fiona is a survivor who has waived her anonymity. Thank you, Fiona.
I resigned from the survivor panel a few months ago over worries of not being listened to properly, over them already making decisions without actually listening to survivors' opinions and it feeling more like a box-ticking exercise. There was concerns over the scope being expanded and the inquiry not staying true to the actual issue. The issue is grooming gang survivors have been failed for decades now. To take the spotlight away from that issue is yet again failing survivors. The inquiry needs to stay laser focused and it needs to bring accountability and justice. There's also a real lack of support in place for these specific people who have been failed over and over again. We need to start rolling out support to start helping these survivors heal from what has gone on. This cannot wait until an inquiry is finished. It is so important to start fixing the effects that have been impacting people for decades and years. Their whole futures have been stripped away from them through failings when they were a child. I would really like to see the government start thinking about how they can start healing these people, supporting them and helping them move forward with their life while this inquiry is ongoing rather than waiting until the end. I would also encourage there to be no timescale on the amount on the period of time it looks at during the inquiry. I think it needs to follow where the evidence comes. Whoever comes forward, they need to be listened to. If they're a grooming gang survivor and they fit the criteria, no matter when it happened to them, it needs to be investigated so we can build up the full picture.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Marlon?
Hi. I guess from a parent of a survivor, this inquiry is once in a generation where we can actually make our children safe. So it has to be done properly. One of the things that I've been saying is, and I do request Labour do this, it needs to be cross-party. There's no political points. It needs to be cross-party, and we all need to work together. What the grooming gangs have done to my daughter, you know, she should be at university now, and she's not. She's quite unwell. She'll never, ever have the opportunities I had, and yourselves. It really needs to change. So this inquiry is paramount. The other concern that I do have with grooming, there's no legal definition around grooming. Labour needs to start with a very, very clear definition around this subject. That's it from me, thank you.
Thank you, Marlon. I know it's very difficult, but thank you. I appreciate that. And now Teresa, who's also a parent.
Well, we just need things to move on, and we need openness and honesty in all this. And we just need all the excuses to stop and this move forward. Because like my son's no longer here, how many other victims / survivors are not here to see the justice? All the time it's being delayed. People are falling away. And we are losing confidence in our local councils and the government. You know, there's nothing, we're not getting nothing. It's just a standstill. And we feel that it's being denied. And they are moving away from the issues of who is committing these crimes. Because it is, at the end of the day, it's a crime.
Thank you, Teresa. And finally, Lucia, who is an advocate for survivors and victims who don't want to waive their anonymity.
Okay, the greatest harm this year it's not only been the lack of progress, it's been the impact of that delay on survivors. Every month, the no movement causes more re-traumatisation, sleepless nights, there's families under immense strain and survivors losing what little trust they had in the system. The lack of coordination at the highest levels has only deepened survivor suffering. As a survivor advocate, I wrote to the Home Secretary 4 weeks ago about the stalling of the Oldham inquiry. I still haven't received a reply. What we're seeing is a system from top to bottom where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Everyone is blaming someone else and no one is taking ownership and being proactive, or at least that's how it looks. If the government do deem themselves to be being proactive, then they're certainly not being transparent about it. And what is happening nationally right now is simply the Oldham situation on steroids. It's the same delays, the same lack of communication, involving more departments, more confusion, more delay and more damage to survivors who have already waited far too long. A national inquiry must examine the entire process that the journey of the survivor takes, from first disclosure of the crimes through to the courtroom and beyond. We know too many inconsistencies and mistreatments of survivors that happen along the way, and this terms of reference covers that, amongst many other areas of concerns that we've drawn on from first-hand experience. We're not here for more lessons learnt. We're here not to only look back, but to insist on looking forward, to ensure that the system takes care of forthcoming recommendations from the inquiry, and again, this terms of reference does see to that. Child sexual exploitation doesn't end when the abuse ends. It affects survivors, it affects their children, it affects their families, it affects their health and their relationships, and it affects entire communities. If this generational harm is ignored, the inquiry will miss the true scale of what this crime destroys. This is why we implore the government to take on this piece of work and work together in the name of our country, not tolerating the rape and grooming of our children.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to open up to questions from the media. The first question is Jason Farrell, Sky News.
You said in this... Oh. You just said that you didn't want to leave any stones unturned. And those words were used by Sajid Javid back in 2018 when he ordered what you're calling for, which was a review into the ethnicity of grooming gangs. That found, 2 years later, that most of the perpetrators of group-based sexual abuse were white. But it also found a lack of data. And at that point, Priti Patel said that you would, as your government, improve data gathering. Are you saying today that you actually failed in gathering data, improving the gathering of data, that that inquiry was a whitewash, and that you did leave stones unturned when you were in government?
What I'm saying is that despite a lot of work and a lot of effort, there is still more to be done. We are not in government anymore. Labour is in government. So we are asking them to do what we think needs to be done. Now, We had an inquiry. It took years. That was the ICSA inquiry. And that ended up having such a wide scope that it couldn't look into this issue, into the... If I may finish, it didn't look into this issue specifically. Widening the scope to all group-based child sexual abuse is not what we're talking about here. And it was because it was so widened that we didn't get to the nub of the issue. More and more has been done. We had a grooming gangs task force that found 550 perpetrators. Even I, who was, a minister in government, was learning and discovering the sheer scale of this. We didn't know everything we know now then. What I'm saying is that now we know what we know. What needs to be done here? Full national inquiry, looking at the failures of the state as well. That's something that hasn't really been covered. What did the councils do wrong? What did the police do wrong? Maybe what did the government do wrong? That's what we want to see. And all that's been happening is kicking this into the long grass, lots of meetings, messing the survivors about, and they are fed up. So I'm not here to build a time machine and go back in time to see what extra we could have done there. We did what we did what we thought was enough, more came out. What do the survivors need now? That's what we're here to talk about. Thank you. Romilly Weeks.
Sorry, my apologies. I'd muted it. What I want, I'm going to stop it there. And the reason I'm going to stop it there is I think it's a significant position. What you've got is the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, clearly failing to take any responsibility in terms of the Conservatives of what came before. We did what we did, but we need to move on. She's also claiming ignorance. If we had known then what we now know. Kemi Badenoch, your party knew. You've got two people there who are from Oldham, Lucia Ray and Teresa, falling out with both of them. Very, very clear. And I'll explain why. And Marlon, who fell out with me. I've not done anything to him, never spoke badly to him, but he was playing politics and continues to play politics. Fiona, I have nothing but respect for. But this is what we did 5 years ago. We wrote to the Conservative government from Oldham, begging them to intervene. They knew that Labour controlled the town. They knew the severity of what was taking place. And they told us we filled in the wrong forms and they'd only listen to us once the request came from the council, a council that was Labour run, neck deep in the cover-up. That is the truth. And I would have more respect for her and all the other Conservatives if they owned that. I've maintained from the outset, making mistakes is not a failing in life. It's what you do after you've made the mistakes that defines the person that you are. So no, I'm not happy with this. I'm also not happy with what's taken place. And you can see the panel. Ignore Fiona. She has every right to be there. Lucia, Teresa, Marlon. Their understanding of this, their insights into this are shallow. Lucia was a member of the Failsworth Independent Party. She got voted out. The Failsworth Independent Party and now the very party in Oldham that are propping up the Labour Party run administration. Theresa fell out with me because she got involved with some of the Pakistani men and got angry and angry at me. Because I wouldn't name politicians that she claimed was involved in the rape of her son when she wouldn't name them herself. And she started speaking with Irish Imi, who is Arooj Shah's right-hand man. This is what these people are. So, that is the context. And let me just draw something for you. Just to show you. Very, very clearly, very, very easily. Before I dissect in the way I dissect. This is as simple as this. These are the rape gangs. Racially motivated. Religiously justified. Politically protected. Because of the votes, yeah. And the multicultural utopia, all of that. Socially accepted. That's it. It's as simple as that. If you want to get to the truth of this, you need a national inquiry that looks at all four of these phenomena, as well as confirm and clarify what exactly makes the rape gangs distinct to other forms of child abuse. It's no more complicated than that. So, I read the terms of reference. I read the terms of reference. I listened to the 1 hour press conference in its entirety. I listened to all the interviews. This is what I think is really going on. What the Conservatives are saying, what they're not saying. Labour promised a national grooming gang inquiry after the Casey audit, Baroness Casey, yeah. They accepted all of her recommendations, including a national statutory inquiry into group-based child sexual exploitation, the rape gangs, supported by targeted local investigations across England and Wales. The public model included a national inquiry under the Inquiries Act 2005, a chair with statutory powers, local deep dives in high-risk areas, a victims and survivors liaison panel to shape the terms of reference, and a time-limited, trauma-informed, survivor-centred approach. The implementation collapsed immediately. 2 proposed chairs withdrew. Annie Hudson and Jim Gamble both walked away. Survivors like Fiona resigned from the government's panel. Open conflict erupted over whether Labour was diluting the inquiry by broadening it into general CSA, child sex exploitation, which is what Fiona made reference to, and Teresa, to her credit, made reference to, and removing focus from organised group-based exploitation. Jess Phillips' role created additional tensions and public disputes, shall we say. Labour now has political commitment, but no operational delivery. No chair, no finalised terms of reference, a complete breakdown of trust with survivors, accusations of scope manipulation, public perception that Labour is either dithering or avoiding the politically explosive aspects. A vacuum now exists. And the Conservatives today stepped directly into that vacuum. Kemi Badenoch and Chris Philp held a press conference this morning alongside survivors, parents and advocates. They're all disillusioned with the government's process. So they unveiled a complete, ready-to-sign terms of reference for a statutory public inquiry. The message is a simple one. Labour promised an inquiry but failed to deliver it. Here is a legally complete, survivor-informed terms of reference that could be adopted tomorrow. This is the politics. This serves multiple purposes. Political pressure, making Labour appear incompetent or evasive. Narrative control, defining the scope and language before Labour publishes anything. Survivor legitimacy, framing themselves as aligned with survivors while portraying Labour as dismissive or manipulative. And issuing ownership and seizing leadership on safeguarding justice and institutional accountability. So there's 4 themes there. The Conservatives are not creating a different inquiry. They are trying to own the inquiry Labour already promised and box Labour into the framing. So, because of that, there are elements of what they want that is basically the same as Labour. Since Labour hasn't published the terms of reference, this comparison I'm drawing comes from Labour's stated models. It's what they've said in Parliament, in the stuff they've released. Cases, recommendations. Remember they said that accepted in full. Ministerial statements. The Conservatives have adopted the same broad architecture. Both want a statutory inquiry under the Inquiries Act 2005, with full powers to compel documents, summon witnesses and take evidence on oath. The Conservative terms of reference explicitly states this in clauses, I think 1, 1.1, 1.3. Both use the identical legal foundations. So when Chris Philp says we want this, statutory powers to compel evidence, mate, give it a rest. The Labour government has already committed to that. Both want a national commission with authority to initiate in-depth local investigations across England and Wales. Scotland can't be because of the law. It's a parallel system, it's an independent system. But a national commission with authority to initiate in-depth local investigations across England and Wales is what both want. The Conservative clauses give the chair power to establish local inquiries, appoint local chairs and impose consistent standards. Both adopt what's known as a hub and spoke inquiry structure with national leadership alongside local deep dives in areas of concern. Both focus on group-based child sexual exploitation meaning multiple offender extra family networks. The Conservative clause, specific again, defines organised networks and group-based CSC using the same conceptual framing as the government. Same case type focus. You're going to have to give me some time to maybe do the work I've done, and you'll see there's more than that. That's the difference. But let's start or continue on what is the same. Both want time-limited inquiries. Labour committed to this in principle, though unspecified, but I think Jess Phillips is on record saying 2 years, 3 years. Conservative clause 15.2 hard codes to a 2-year completion period. So both agree in principle and the Conservatives specify. Fiona, to the greatest of respect to her, doesn't understand the law. You can't include Scotland. That's got to come from the Scottish Parliament and devolution and all of that took place. Both demand institutional accountability, holding police, councils and others to account for past and present failings. Conservative clause specifically investigates institutional failure, concealment, suppression, complicity, identical intentions, although the Conservative text is more explicit on cover-ups. Both claim to be survivor-centred, trauma-informed approaches. Labour made repeated commitments to trauma-informed survivor-led process and created a survivors liaison panel. The Conservative clause 3.1, 6.1, 2.1, etc. detailed provisions for support, anonymity, protected testimony, redress. So both do that. Survivor-centred approach. What is different then with the Conservatives to Labour? First and foremost, as someone just said, it is judge-led versus non-judicial chairs. Labour attempted to appoint 2 non-judicial chairs, causing survivor backlash. Conservatives seized that weakness. Labour wanted an independent chair, not necessarily a judge. The Conservative terms of reference is implicit but consistent with a judicial chair, and they've publicly insisted upon this. The Conservatives present themselves as restoring seriousness and independence. There's more. That's different. The Conservatives have got ethnicity and religion front and centre. They've got the clans there. Labour treats ethnicity as sensitive. Forget religion. It doesn't even exist in their paradigm. The Conservatives make it explicit. Labour acknowledges ethnic patterns cautiously and emphasises improved data. The Conservative clauses 2.1, B, C, 3.13 mandate explicit examination of ethnic, religious, national, family and clan characteristics and motivations. The Conservatives lock ethnicity into the heart of the analysis. It's credible. To give them credit. You see, I'm criticised, but I'll give them credit. To their credit, they do that. The Conservatives have also got a focus on a narrow scope versus dilution, which came from Labour. Survivors like Fiona have accused Labour of trying to broaden the remit to avoid the specific grooming gang pattern. Labour shows tension between narrow and broad scope. The Conservative terms of reference provides clear, tight definition around organised networks and extra-familial exploitation. The Conservatives have preempted Labour from expanding the scope. The Conservatives have a hard 2-year limit. They exploit, recognise exploit's the wrong word. They acknowledge the survivor frustration with delays. Labour committed to a time limit process but undefined, but the Conservative clause 15.2 imposes 2 years with strict extension criteria. There's a sharper sense of urgency. If you're a Conservative and you're happy with me so far, you're now not going to be so keen on me, but remember, I am a campaigner. I'm here to campaign. Both models, Labour and Conservative, omit the mechanisms that enabled the rape gangs to operate for decades. Each gap shows why neither party will deliver genuine accountability. Listen to me carefully. Both parties talk about survivor-centred inquiry, but structurally, neither gives survivors meaningful power. Under Labour, survivors felt manipulated and sidelined. Under the Conservative terms of reference, survivors become respected. They become respected witnesses, but not decision makers. This risks another inquiry about survivors, not with survivors. Labour created a survivors liaison panel with advisory status where survivors played a role in shaping the terms of reference and advising on chair selection. We now know it's bullshit, but they did that, and that's why the execution collapsed, because they didn't mean it. The Conservative clause 3.1, 7 and 8, 6.1 as well, reference trauma-informed, survivor-centred procedures, but provide no formal survivor governance structure. No survivor veto or co-design role. Survivors appear only as witnesses, not co-creators. Both models lack survivor power. Conservatives remove even the advisory panel mechanisms Labour established. Survivors have no procedural rights, only discretionary privileges. The next one, the electoral politics underpinning this. Remember we talked about selling children for votes? I used that phrase. Across Rotherham, Rochdale, Oldham, all of the places, survivors and whistleblowers describe a specific political mechanism. Children were sacrificed to maintain electoral relationships with certain communities or community leaders. This is central to understanding institutional paralysis. Yet neither party's model names it. Remember that diagram I just drew for you? With the politically protected element on one side? They haven't got the courage to go there. Yet. Labour has no explicit commitment to examine electoral motives or political interference. Public defensiveness when the issue is raised. Conservative clause 11.6 includes elected officials in definition of state institutions. Clause 2.1 allows examination of failures driven by religious, ethnic and national characteristics, but there is no specific clause on electoral calculations, block votes, ward level politics or councillor pressure on services. The mechanism, children were traded for political stability, is not mandated for investigation, and if it's not mandated for investigation, it will not be investigated. Electoral incentives remain invisible, yet if you follow my work, you will know that as implausible as it may have sounded at the beginning, that is all that can explain some of the most catastrophic failures that took place. They sold children for votes. There's more. We did not get here overnight. We fought and fought and fought, and we exposed local inquiries, regional inquiries for the cover-ups that they were. The previous cover-up inquiries and assurance reviews, we exposed them. Many of the biggest cover-ups happened not in the original crime period, but through the subsequent reviews, inquiries and assurance reviews. And yes, I'm looking at you, Andy Burnham. This is the man who would be Prime Minister, remember. These exercises were designed to close the issue. Without auditing those, the inquiry cannot uncover the true scale of institutional concealment. Maggie Oliver said the state covered it up, were complicit. So how can a national inquiry not investigate the previous inquiries that sought to conceal what took place? And pull in the politicians and the policy makers who had leading roles in that. Labour has relied heavily on internal reviews and assurance exercises that survivors see as whitewash, with no commitment to revisit them. Conservative clauses 2.1 D2E allow examination of concealment by institutions, and clause 4.3 allows examination of past actions and omissions, but there is no explicit obligation to audit previous inquiries. How can that be? This meta-level cover-ups carried out through official reviews is not required terrain. This weakens institutional accountability significantly. How can they omit that? How can they omit that? And then you can see it in the way they gave the interviews. This is the Conservatives and the terms of reference themselves. And again, everything I'm sharing with you, I did not know the details until this morning. When the terms of reference was released, when the press conference, this is where I'm getting it from. I'm not getting it from, I'm not plucking it out of fresh air. Survivors repeatedly emphasize that the system hides behind abstractions. Institutional failures, lessons learned. That's what I mean. While those who knowingly obstructed justice retire with honours. Without naming individuals, the truth is never the truth. Labour speaks in terms of generic institutional failure with no commitment to publish individual names. Conservative clause 5.1 permits but does not require findings critical of individuals. No clause requiring a schedule of responsible individuals. No consequences or disqualification mechanisms. The inquiry may produce systemic blame without personal accountability. Those responsible for cover-up may remain anonymous. I would say they will remain anonymous unless it is explicitly designed into, hard-wired into the terms of reference. I take it further. You can name names. That's not enough. I know what a national inquiry is. I've shared with you what one includes and how far it can go under the Inquiries Act 2005. We need a prosecution criteria and CPS reform recommendations within this. A prosecution criteria. A central survivor grievance is that the CPS repeatedly refused to charge multi-perpetrator cases due to insufficient likelihood of convictions. Despite extensive patterns, any serious inquiry must confront prosecutional culture. Labour has no promise to reform CPS charging thresholds, specifically for group-based CSE. Conservative Clauses 2.1 examines charging decisions, and Clause 2.12 provides power to send evidence to the police, NCA and the DPP, but there is no requirement to propose new prosecutional thresholds or policies. Do you see how this national inquiry, whilst it needs to be narrow, then also needs to be broad on what it's narrow? What they're trying to do is just make it broad so it's lost. But when you drill down, you don't actually do less, you do more. I am just as blacklisted by them as I am the mainstream media. They know who I am, Natalia. They know who I am. They're listening to me right now. They would rather from my town have Lucia read from a script, Ray, or Teresa, I'm a parent. The analogy I gave you earlier about the MasterChef program and trying to copy that. Do you see? As it stands, the CPS can escape structural scrutiny, and this inquiry may describe failures but will not prescribe enforceable reforms. There is nothing here about the motivation and belief systems of the perpetrators, not enough anyway. Understanding why perpetrators target specific victims is essential. This involves misogyny, racialized contempt, religious justification, honor and shame dynamics, criminal economies, peer networks. Reducing motivations to just ethnicity misses the operational reality. Labour shows cautious discussion of ethnic patterns with little public engagement with ideological content. The Conservative Clause 3.1 brackets 3 explores religious, racial, ethnic, national and cultural motivations, but no explicit requirement to examine misogyny, racialised targeting of white girls, criminal economy or intergenerational grooming. The motivation risks being flattened into demographics rather than crime logic. Without this deeper analysis, prevention strategies remain non-existent. And I think Robbie Moore made reference to this independently, by the way. Many scandals hinge on disappeared files, overwritten systems, lost case notes. Without auditing these patterns, no inquiry can reveal the real extent of institutional cover-up. Labour has no commitment to examine historical data destruction. Conservative Clause 7.1 governs data handling within inquiry, but there is no requirement to investigate past destruction or loss. Do you see what I'm doing here? The institutional concealment via data manipulation remains unexamined. Key evidence may already have been destroyed, and we should know if it has. Shouldn't we? And then there are the specifics. Some of the areas where this took place. Taxi licensing boards, ignored warnings, professional regulators, protected staff, trade unions resisted disciplinary processes. These bodies form part of the system, but rarely face scrutiny. Labour has no explicit commitments here, and the Conservative Clause 11.6 does not explicitly include regulators, taxi licensing boards, unions, any of that. They may fall under state institutions only if broadly interpreted, and they won't broadly interpret this. Regulatory failures remain optional. They need to be mandated. The core mechanisms of institutional failure as it stands are bypassed, and we need to make sure that the terms of reference that come out in the end do not allow it to be bypassed. Biggie for me. There is nothing in here about the complicity of the media, of the mainstream media. Local newspapers, journalists, at best were pressured not to report, at worst were partners in the cover-up. National outlets avoided the issue. We were called far right. They pushed it. Who do you think pushed it? It was the mainstream media. The media behaviour shaped public understanding and political pressure, yet inquiries rarely scrutinise the role of the media. Well, it's time, particularly for the BBC. Remember, it's state-funded. The likes of the Manchester Evening News, funded by the licence payer via the local democracy network. They need to be investigated. Yes, Gary. Labour has no commitments to examine the media. And the Conservative clauses 12.1 to 12.3 concern inquiry communications, but not media behaviour. The mainstream media, a key actor in both exposing and suppressing truth, escapes scrutiny entirely. This cannot be the case. There's something about community intimidation and coercion. Victims describe threats, ostracism, family pressure, reputational fear, community retaliation. These dynamics shaped policing and CPS decisions, yet systemic intimidation is seldom analysed. Labour recognises the issue superficially, with no structural plan. The Conservative plans 3.1 brackets 8 and 6.1 provide trauma support, but no thematic module on intimidation. Intimidation remains case by case rather than systemic. Failure to examine this undermines understanding of reporting barriers. Why did they not come forward? Why did people from the community not come forward? Surely that has to be a theme. And then the evidence preservation before the inquiry begins. The period between political announcement and formal inquiry commencement is where most evidence disappears. Without immediate preservation orders, inquiries start with half the record missing at best. Labour did not issue urgent preservation instructions. The Conservative Clause 7.1 provides robust evidence handling after commencement, but no mechanism for pre-commencement preservation. Critical evidence will now vanish before the inquiry begins. Institutions with something to hide face no pressure to secure records. You finding value in this? Political interference during the inquiry. If ministers can amend the terms of reference or direct the inquiry mid-flight, operational independence is undermined. Agreed? Labour holds amendment power as government. The Conservative Clause 14.1 allows the Home Secretary to amend the terms of reference after consultation with no parliamentary or survivor oversight. You missed that, didn't you? The inquiry can be narrowed or redirected during sensitive phases. And then there is the implementation and enforcement of the recommendations. Too many inquiries produce powerful findings that gather dust. ICSA. Without binding implementation, this becomes theatrical accountability. Labour provides standard commitments to respond with no enforcement mechanism. Conservative clause 10.3 states government will respond and chair may recommend monitoring. Deadline required but no statutory enforcement. Left as it is, these conservative terms of reference means that the recommendations can be opted out of and not to be implemented. It is a high risk of the repeat of ICSA problem, large report, weak follow through. I say this to Fiona Goddard and her team who are watching this. Did you really help write this? Did you really help write this? And forget to include within the clause of the terms of reference an implementation strategy? We need to understand how these networks function. Recruitment, coercion, movement, exploitation sites. It is essential to prevent this from happening in the future. Definitions alone do not replace operational mapping. Labour has no published plan for granular mapping. Conservative clauses 11.3, 11.4 provide definitions, and clauses 3.1, 4 to 5 look at links to criminality and family networks, but there is no explicit requirement to map hubs like taxis, takeaways, vape shops, grooming pathways or control strategies. A national inquiry surely has to have that. How on earth did they rape, traffic and sell our children? Without detailed operational mapping, future safeguarding responses, they don't exist. What I've tried to do is show how both Labour and the Conservative models operate within the same fundamental constraints, how both parties remain captured by electoral calculations, institutional loyalties, and professional class solidarity that prevents genuine accountability. And this is why, on one side, they consider me a dangerous man, and on the other side, they will never sit in a room with me. I'll produce something that we'll share in the morning of what a real terms of reference would look like. It'll be emailed out to all of you, and I'll leave it to you guys to read, amplify and hopefully share. I need to do this, so if you please bear with me for 2 minutes. I need to thank all of you who provided a super chat, but please, for those of you who are new to me, and 2,400 of you have joined me this evening, please, please, please sign up to Red Wall and the Rabble. We need the numbers. Without the numbers, this is just an echo chamber. We now know, you now know what's taking place. I've just explained it to you. Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, I've just explained it to you. I'll read it out again. Labour, both the Labour and Conservative models operate within the same fundamental constraints. I am politely saying they are two cheeks of the same backside. Both parties remain captured by electoral calculations, institutional loyalties, and professional class solidarity that prevents genuine accountability. My name is Raj Emir. This was a Recusant 9 transmission.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.